What if you traveled 800 miles chasing a dream, only to be abandoned in the dark with nowhere to go? On a freezing Montana night, Kate Walsh lay alone on the prairie, betrayed, forgotten, and one step away from disappearing forever. But just before everything ends, a stranger chooses not to ride past her. Welcome to our channel, where we tell stories of the Wild West, cowboys, love, motherhood, human connection, and compassion in the harshest lands. This story reminds us that sometimes one act of kindness can change an entire life. If this story pulls you in, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.
Family comes first. That was the only law that mattered out here. My sister's girl, she needed this. That teaching position was a lifeline, not some Boston fancy. I saw the contract in my desk, a piece of paper from a world that did not understand ours. A promise to a stranger meant less than a roof over my own blood. My job was protecting this town, and my family was its heart. That woman 800 miles away was just a name, a problem I already solved. I sent the letter. I told her not to come. Any trouble now was on her, not me. This was the right thing to do. The only thing. The paper felt thin. Her hat likely could not handle our wind. I pictured some frail woman who knew nothing of this hard land. She had no business here. My concern was for my niece, for family. Then the station master sent word. She arrived anyway, a fool's errand. I told myself it was not my problem. The station closes at midnight. The town is 6 miles north. A short walk for anyone with sense. I was supposed to meet her. Harlan Coleman, the school superintendent. But I met my obligation to my kin. That position was filled 2 weeks ago. That Boston teacher should have known. She made her own choice coming here. The morning train east leaves at 6, a simple solution. She spent everything she had. Well, that was a poor gamble on her part. A problem of her own making. The station master said he gave her 5 minutes. Then he was locking up. Good, firm, the way things ought to be. A man has to be practical. I stood from my desk and looked into the blackness. The prairie is not a gentle place. It swallows the unprepared. But she had a road, 6 miles. A boarding house was at the end of it. She was not my responsibility. She was a loose end, and I had already tied it off. Her choice to walk that road was her own. 15 minutes. She would be on her way now. My house was warm. The fire crackled. My own arms felt strong, not screaming with the weight of some trunk. My lungs burned only from good tobacco. The darkness outside was just a backdrop for my own comfort. I sat with my family. This was why I did it. For this peace. For their safety. I pushed away the image of a lone woman on that road. She was a stranger. The shock of betrayal was not my concern. The weight of her uncertainty was not mine to carry. She made a mistake. People do. This is how you learn. This is how the world works. She would be fine. The world is not grand tragedy. It is small choices, quiet defeats. Forgetting someone on a dark road is easy when you believe it is for the best. I closed my eyes, comfortable in my chair. Then a knock came. It was Jack, breathless from the cold. He works for Samuel Wade. They had found someone. My body went still. A woman on the road, nearly frozen. He said the cold had locked her up tight. He said Wade had stopped. The one man in this county who bothers with nothing had stopped. No, no, please. The words echoed in my head, though I had not heard them. My choice now had a face. A body on the frozen ground. Another voice from the wagon. Nearly frozen. Samuel was wrapping her in his own coat. He was bringing her in. The younger man, Jack, was riding ahead. They were taking her to the boarding house of Mrs. Perry. The news spread like fire on a dry plain. She was alive. The relief felt sour in my stomach. Not my problem anymore. Wade found her. Wade can deal with her. He settled her in the wagon, they said, gentle, getting her warm first. My trunk. He had her trunk, too. My name was not mentioned yet, just a woman Samuel rescued. I had to know. I had to understand how close I had come. Who are you? The question she asked him felt aimed at me. Samuel Wade. He told her his name. He told her she was going to be all right. A simple promise I should have made. An impossible one I ran from. I woke the next morning and the town was already buzzing. White walls, white sheets. That is where they put her. Inside the boarding house of Mrs. Perry. My own head was the one pounding. Every muscle tense. A woman's voice, older and firm. Judith Perry's voice. She would get the story. She would know why she was out there. Dry Hollow. The name of our town felt like a judgment. A place where all kindness had run dry. All because of what I had done. Samuel Wade brought you in last night, half dead from the cold. Asleep 14 hours. The words were repeated at the general store. At the saloon. And my name was attached to them now. He paid for her room. 2 weeks. Left instructions she was not to worry. The quiet decency of that man was a mirror to my own failure. A stranger had done what I, the superintendent, should have done. I need to thank him. No, she needed to thank him. I needed to disappear. I saw Mrs. Perry on the street. Her expression could curdle milk. She knew, they all knew. A Boston girl sleeping on the prairie. My fault. She was my vagrant. She was abandoned. She nearly died. And now she was safe. Safe because of a man who was not me. A stranger named Samuel Wade had chosen not to ride past a dying body. The thought made my stomach turn. How close had she come? What if he had not been on that road? Her body would have vanished into Montana. My secret would have been safe. The thought was ugly. It coiled in my gut. A knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. It was my niece, Annie. She helped at Mrs. Perry's house. She told me the new boarder was awake. The one they were all talking about, the one I tried to erase. The station master talked, of course he did. Mr. Brennan told everyone. She came for the job Coleman gave his niece instead. The heat in my own cheeks was shame. Dry Hollow has maybe 300 people. My actions were not a secret, they were a story. And the part that fascinated them, Annie said, was that Samuel stopped. Samuel never stops for anyone. He lost his own family, he keeps to himself. But he stopped for you, for her. The weight of it settled on me. He showed a mercy I had denied. She asked what he was like, honest, fair, a man whose words mattered, everything I had failed to be. People were listening, and I was the villain. It was a matter of family, a simple practical choice. My niece belonged here, she understood our ways. This Miss Walsh from the East was a gamble, an unknown quantity. Sending the letter was a necessary correction, a small unpleasantness to ensure stability. My duty was to the community, not some stranger with a piece of paper. The girl should have understood. She should have stayed where she belonged. Instead, she brought her troubles here. Now I hear she's laid up at Perry's place, making a scene, stirring up gossip. I have to go down there and put a stop to this nonsense. Ungrateful is what it is. I offered a chance and circumstances changed. That is life. She chose to see it as a betrayal instead of what it was. A sensible business decision for the good of this town. This was my responsibility. A mess I now had to clean up myself. The noise from the parlor was exactly what I expected, meddling. Mrs. Perry always had to have her say. This is my business. I will not have my authority questioned in a boarding house. The woman brings chaos. I knew it from the start. False hopes based on a preliminary letter. My hands tightened on my hat. Then she appeared, a wraith in a nightgown. The source of all this trouble, that voice. She knew my name, of course, Harlan Coleman. The man who made a promise and then made a better decision. I was already forming the words. Her legs looked weak. Good. A little fragility would make this easier. I would be firm but fair. A man of reason dealing with female hysterics. The entire room went silent. They were all watching me, waiting for me to restore order, which is exactly what I intended to do, with or without their approval. And then that rancher, Wade, stood there holding his hat like some hired hand. Miss Walsh. My voice was calm. a balm on her agitation. "You should not be out of bed. I was being perfectly reasonable." She accused me of lying. The melodrama of it all. I gave her a position. A contract was signed. She threw my own words back at me. I explained the situation calmly. A misunderstanding. It was not a misunderstanding at all. My niece was the better choice. I would not apologize for protecting my own family. Did I know what I had done? I had made a responsible choice for the school. My obligation was to the board, not to her. These frontier positions require a certain grit, a local understanding. She was not a liar, just a woman who did not get her way. I tried to explain this, but Wade's voice cut in, a quiet sound that was somehow loud. He had no place in this. I was taken aback. This was not his concern. He said he heard me. His eyes were flat, like river stones. He spoke of her journey, 800 miles, as if distance created some obligation on my part. He broke it. The accusation hung in the air. He called me a victim. The nerve. "This is none of your business, Wade." It became my business. His tone was infuriatingly calm. He claimed he found her on the prairie. More drama. He took one step. I am not a man who retreats, but the space felt small. "Get out." The command was absurd. "I am the superintendent. You cannot threaten me." It was not a threat, he said. A fact. His composure was the worst part. He gave me 10 seconds. I looked for an ally in Mrs. Perry. She gave me nothing. I glanced at the Walsh woman. Her stare was pure hatred. I left. The door slamming was the only satisfaction I got. My intervention had been a complete disaster. Mrs. Perry would talk. The entire town would hear Wade's version of the story. I needed to get ahead of this. Back to my office. I would draft a formal letter to the board tonight. Frame it as protecting the school from an unstable woman and her thuggish protector. "I am fine," her voice echoed in my head. She was far from fine. She was a liability. Wade was a bigger problem. A man like that, with land and influence, could make things difficult. I had to be careful. He was a brute, but a quiet one, the dangerous kind. I had to find a way to discredit him, to neutralize this threat before it grew. My reputation was on the line. I had to prove that my decision was not just right, but necessary for the town's well-being. It was not my problem. I repeated the words to myself. He swore he would not be that person. What person? A fool who gets involved in other people's messes. A man who mistakes a bad decision for a moral crisis. I looked away for good reason. Because it is how you survive. You take care of your own. You do not pick up strays on the side of the road and make their problems yours. That is sentiment, not sense. He thought he was a hero. I knew he was just a rancher playing a part. He saw someone forgotten. I saw someone who failed to plan, someone who came out west with nothing but a worthless piece of paper and a head full of foolish expectations. It was not my fault. It was never my fault. I just could not let them convince anyone otherwise. I would not be made the villain in this town. Not by her, and certainly not by him. He left her alone. Good. Now she had to face reality. What options did she have? None. He was offering her empty words. There is more than one way to do a job. Nonsense. The teaching job was gone. I had made sure of it. She would be on the next train back east, a forgotten memory. I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. I had protected the community from an outsider. I had secured a position for my blood. This was how the world worked. The strong make decisions, and the weak learn to live with them. She was feeling possibility. I was feeling the solid satisfaction of a job well done, a problem contained, a crisis averted. She was nothing more than a loose end, and I had just tied her off for good. For now, everything was back in its proper order. The world was right again. $17.32. It was almost comical. She was desperate. Of course she was. The train ticket would cost $12. She would be left with $5, just enough to disappear. That was the best possible outcome. I had already spoken to a few people, planted the seed that she was unstable, prone to hysterics. Mrs. Perry was a known gossip, but her loyalty was to this town, not to some newcomer. She knew how things worked. You need connections here. You need family. Kate had neither. She was asking for work, laundry, cooking. It was pathetic. An educated woman reduced to begging for scraps. It was a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. This land did not reward weakness. She should never have come here in the first place. An outsider. Exactly, she knew it herself. Too educated for menial work, not connected enough for a real position. Stuck. That is the word for it. Her options were gone. I had made certain of that. Then I heard that Wade had stopped by. While she was sleeping, he was asking questions about her education, her family. My stomach tightened. What was he planning? What game was this rancher playing? He was not a man to act without a reason. He was going to make some kind of offer. I knew it. He was going to meddle further. This was not over. Mrs. Perry told her the truth, that she was alone, that she was running out of choices. He was using her desperation against her, or for her. I could not decide which was worse. He came back, around noon, to talk. I could picture the scene, the parlor, her trying to look proud, him with that stone-faced expression. I am not dying anymore. Such defiance. He wanted to talk about his ranch, Silver Ridge, 5,000 acres, cattle, horses. He had a dozen workers, families, and their children, children who could not read or write. The pieces clicked into place in my mind. It was so obvious, so infuriatingly simple. He was going to hire her, not as a governess, not for one family. He was going to build a school, his own school, on his land, for his people. He was going around me. He was making my authority, my school board, irrelevant. This was not about charity. This was a challenge, a direct play for power in this territory, and he was using that woman to do it. Word travels. I hear Wade is looking to hire a school teacher out on his ranch. He aims to build a school for the Hands children. It is a foolish notion, reading and numbers for field work. He offers $30 a month, they say, and a private cabin. More than a man earns breaking horses. I know why he does it. He is trying to fix something that is not broken. This woman he finds must be desperate, taking a job meant to disrupt the order of things. He is not creating a position. He is creating a problem. These children need to learn their place, not letters. The world has rules for a reason. He wants a teacher for them. I want him to see reason before it is too late. He offers them a chance. He claims my school will not. He is right. It is not a chance. It is a poison. He believes this is about justice, not about the woman he saved. The man's heart is clouded by old grief. Wasting $30 a month to soothe a wound that will not heal. It is a weakness I cannot abide. I built my school on principle, not charity. Miss Walsh, that is her name. She traveled 800 miles for this. Why? A woman with her own reasons, none of them good for this valley. Wade thinks she is capable. I think she is an ember carried on the wind. And he does not know where she will land. I am sorry, she says. She should be. She does not know how to accept help. She will learn what his kind of help costs everyone. She speaks of debt, of every meal and every dress feeling like a weight. That is the way of the world. One earns their keep. Samuel Wade does not understand this anymore. His wife fell sick 6 years ago. A fever took her. The doctor was 10 miles away in town. Wade rode through a storm, a panicked fool. He demanded help, but there were others who had paid, others who were waiting their turn. Mary had to wait. She was gone the next day. The baby followed soon after. That is a hard thing, but it should have taught him that life has a ledger. It does not hand out favors. He learned the wrong lesson from his pain. He thinks debt is something you give away. It is not inconvenience. It is order. Those children are owed nothing but what their fathers earn. They can read and write. A fine skill for a world they will never belong to. This is not Wade paying a debt forward. This is him setting a fire to feel warm for a night. The job is real, he says. The need is real. She will earn her keep through work. She will teach children who do not need her lessons. She will wonder why she came to this hard place. He promises her a chance to build something that matters. He is wrong. She will build a tower of resentment, brick by painful brick. She will do it because he is lost, and she is looking for a purpose she will not find here. He gives his grief a name and calls it generosity. He sees scales that are not balanced. He wants to fix the world with one small, foolish gesture. When will she start? That is what she asks. He tells her to be ready in a week, to see the space, meet the families. She says she is ready now. Of course she is, eager to begin her mistake. Kate. He calls her Kate. He will have Jack bring a wagon. Pack light, he says. We will get what you need. She asks about the cabin, if it is truly hers. He tells her the door locks from the inside. No one comes near unless invited. He thinks he is protecting her. He is painting a target on her back. He pulled away. What happened at that station, he asks. He thinks he can build a fortress called Silver Ridge and keep the world out. He cannot. He left her standing there, feeling seen, feeling safe. It is a dangerous illusion. Mrs. Perry told her Wade is an honest man, a man to be trusted. This town saw him break after Mary died. They saw a ghost build a ranch. He has not cared for another soul in 6 years. Now this woman arrives. This is not a new beginning. It is the end of the quiet we have worked so hard to keep. That night the woman could not sleep. Good. She should be troubled. She should think about the cost of what she's about to do. She thinks of debt and help, of children and purpose. She does not understand the difference. At midnight she finds Mrs. Perry mending clothes. She asks the old woman if anyone helped Samuel after he lost his family. His brother came. Neighbors brought food. But a man carries that kind of weight alone. He shut them all out, dealt with it by himself. The woman thinks this is why he understands needing help you cannot ask for, to be alone while you drown. No, he does not understand. He is simply drowning again and pulling her down with him. He is a man reaching for a ghost. The woman is perceptive, Mrs. Perry says. It will be hard, she asks. Harder than a city school, easier than dying on the prairie. A sharp truth from the old woman. Samuel will protect her from the outside, but the work, the isolation, the differences she must face by herself. She claims she can do hard. That hard is better than being nothing. She will learn. She will manage, Mrs. Perry tells her. Jack arrived at 8 in the morning, a boy with a foolish grin. He says his sister Maria wants to learn her letters. Maria. Another soul to be filled with pointless hope. He says not everyone trusts education. He is right. Some of us see it for the danger it is. The journey to Silver Ridge took 2 hours, through empty land that makes a person small. She saw the ranch appear, the main house, the corrals, and the workers' cabins, a little village of his own making. Samuel came from the barn. He showed her the small cabin, set apart from the others. That one is yours, he told her. It had a bed, a table, a stove, a door with a lock, her own space. She felt a sense of release. She thought it was hers. Nothing out here is ever truly yours. Samuel said he would let her get situated. Then they would talk about what she needed. Books, supplies, all the tools for her folly. Samuel, she said. She needed to know if he meant it, that she owed him nothing. He did. Then she made her promise. She would not fail these children. She would not waste this chance. Not for him, but for them, and for herself. She needed it to matter. She needed to know she was not just taking up space. He told her she mattered. Such empty words. Welcome to Silver Ridge, he said. He left her in the doorway of her new home, her new life. For a moment, she felt like she belonged. The feeling would not last. I would make sure of it. Order must be kept, whatever the cost. It was a matter of family. When my own blood needs a position, you give it to them. That is the rule. That is how a community stays strong. So when Samuel brought that outsider, Kate Walsh, to his ranch, I felt a grim rightness. I had made the correct choice. Word reached me before noon. He was building her a school out there, for the hands. A foolish, sentimental gesture. He was challenging the natural order of things, and for what? A woman whose ambition I had already measured and found distasteful. I imagined her out there planting seeds of discontent among a simple, hard-working folk. They did not need her Eastern ideas. They needed strong guidance. My guidance. Samuel was a good rancher, but a poor judge of character. He could not see the serpent he had welcomed onto his land. I knew I had to protect my town from her influence. It was my duty. Then I heard what she told them, that she would teach them to read contracts, to avoid being cheated. The arrogance was stunning. She cast shadows on every honest man in this county, myself included. She was not offering education. She was offering poison. She twisted her own failure to get the schoolmarm job into a sob story of being an outsider. She was a manipulator, and the hands, they were beginning to listen. I heard Rose's boy, Diego, was going, even some of the Irish and Chinese. She was gathering the fringes, the people who felt they had a grievance. This was how rebellions started. Not with guns, but with whispers in a barn, with promises of a power they were never meant to have. I would not let her undermine the foundation of this town, not while I was here to stop it. She was even taking the girls, filling their heads with nonsense about power. A girl's power was in a good marriage, in a strong family, not in books and ink. An educated girl was a difficult girl, an unmanageable one. She threatened the very structure of the family. The Chinese man letting his daughter May attend. A fool. He was trading his daughter's quiet future for a handful of English words. I saw her then, not as a teacher, but as a thief, stealing daughters from their fathers, stealing workers from their proper place, stealing the quiet contentment of our lives. I could not challenge her directly. That would make me a bully. But there were other ways, ways that used the town's own nature against the outsiders who sought to change it. I had people watch the ranch. They told me everything. How the families who knew better kept their distance. How Samuel worked beside his men, building her a little kingdom out of scrap wood. He was a fool in love, blinded by a pretty face and a sharp tongue. He could not see he was building his own ruin. They said he was planning to marry her off. That was the rumor I would use. It was plausible. A wealthy bachelor and a single woman, alone on a ranch. Education was just a cover. It was a courtship, a land grab. I knew how to make people listen. You do not shout, you whisper. You plant a seed of doubt and you let it grow in the dark. My man in town told me Samuel bought out half the general store, that he confronted me. It was not a confrontation. It was a declaration. He drew a line in the dust, choosing her over his own town, over me. He spent his own money, wore himself out for her, all without her knowing. The perfect gentleman, or the perfect mark. I saw him in the barn that evening, testing the stove, their little sanctuary. I knew then this was more than a school. It was personal. He had made it personal. Fine. He wanted a fight for the soul of this place. I would give him one. He thought he could protect her with his name and his money. I would show them both that a reputation is a fragile thing, easier to burn than any barn. His position. He wanted to clarify his position. I knew his position. He was a man letting a woman lead him by the nose, defending her. Why? Because he was weak. He saw a project, a stray to be saved. I saw a threat to be neutralized. I knew her kind. She would act the victim, claim she did not know what she was doing, that she was afraid. It was a performance. She was afraid, all right. Afraid that people would see her for what she was. An opportunist, a homewrecker. Samuel's words about pride were a joke. He was the one blinded by it. He thought he could tame her, control this little fire he had started. But fire spreads, and I would be the one to decide which way the wind blew. Mistakes. Bad days. He was preparing her for failure, but I was preparing for her destruction. I watched the children walk to that barn Monday morning. Each one a victory for her, a loss for me. Maria, Diego, the German kids, the twins, a dozen little soldiers for her new world order. They were not just learning letters, they were learning disrespect. They were learning to question. And a town like this cannot survive on questions. It survives on faith, on knowing your place and doing your work. She was building an army of doubters. I had to act. Not later. Now. The whispers had to begin, not about the school, but about them, about the teacher and the rancher. It began with a name. My May brought home a slate, and on it was a word she had made herself. The characters were clumsy, but they were hers. 12 children, 12 slates, 12 families with something new inside their homes, a secret language. I smiled for her, but a coldness took root in my heart. Good, I said, my voice feeling like a lie. Silence filled our small room. The joy on her face was a light I did not recognize. She spoke of the new woman, the teacher. May chattered to her brothers in our tongue. But the slate was in the teacher's language. 3 children out of 12 knew these marks before, now 5. She asked who wanted to write their name, and every hand went up, a starting point for them, an ending point for us. The woman had found what they wanted, not what they needed. She wrote her name on a big board. This is my name, the teacher's name. She gave them chalk, showed them how to break our silence with these strange symbols, her hands guiding theirs. My Diego's mother said he struggled. It is hard, the woman told him. It is hard the first time, but I know it is always hard. This is what they do not understand. You are 9 years old, she told him, and you try something new. Courage, she called it. I call it danger. He tried and tried. The 4th time, the shapes looked right. There, the woman said, that is your name. No one can take it from you. But they can. They can take you from us. His face changed. Frustration became pride. And I felt that same change in my own home, a shift in the air. This is why she came. Not for us, but for this feeling. To watch the world we built become something she can control. The morning passed so quickly for them. By noon, every child had a new name, a new self. Some learned other words. My May wrote her own name, and then the teacher's family name. She beamed when the woman praised her. Tomorrow we learn more, the woman announced. We will start numbers. Who wants to count to 100? They all cheered. After the children came home, I sat at my own table, exhausted, frightened. A knock. It would be a neighbor, her face a mirror of my own fear. Diego came home. Rosa said his name. He showed her the slate. She paused. He wrote it 5 more times. He will show his father tonight. That is wonderful, the teacher had said. It is good what you do. Rosa's voice was hard. But these are not easy children. Some families do not want this change. They want them to stay as they are. Why? Because change is a flood. If children learn too much, they will be swept away. They will think they are too good for their family, for our ways. Rosa's eyes were my eyes. My Diego is a smart boy, but his father worries. He worries Diego will forget who he is. I understood before she even said it. This was not just learning. It was a replacement, and a replacement threatens everything. The teacher says she gives them choices. She does not understand. Choices can break a family. Rosa left the teacher, but no choices breaks a soul. I saw her tomorrow. The second week, the cracks began to show. Miguel, one of the older boys, was gone. His father needed him for the harvest. 2 others fought, and 1 went home bleeding. My May came home with tears in her eyes. Her brother had said she was acting like them, like an outsider. Each report felt like a small victory for our survival. The teacher was failing. That night, I watched her from a distance. She sat outside her cabin, staring into the dark. A man came. He told her about Miguel. His father said work matters more than letters. The teacher did not understand. For his family it does. An extra pair of hands is life, so she must accept it. She must let our children be. But her frustration was a fire. It is easy for you to say, she told the man. You are not watching them slip away. No. The man's voice grew cold. I watched my wife and daughter die because I could not reach them. I could not make the doctor care. Do not tell me I do not know about losing people. The words hung in the night air. I felt no pity. Her pain was small. The man was right. Her frustration will burn her out. She has been here only 8 days. She knows nothing of time. He walked away. She sat alone, her shame a bitter smoke. She had used his loss against him, caught in her own small storm. The next morning I saw her wait for him. She stood in his path. "I am sorry." "What I said was wrong." The man studied her. "You meant it." "I meant I was frustrated. Not that you do not understand loss." She forced herself to look at him. "You understand it better. And I am ashamed." "Why?" The question made her pause. "Because it was wrong." "No. Why were you so angry? Why is one boy leaving so personal?" The teacher's mouth opened, then closed. She could not speak the truth, but the man waited, and his waiting broke her. "Because if I cannot save them, what is the point of me?" The words were a confession. All my life I was not needed, a burden. If I cannot do this, I am just useless again. The man's voice was rough. "You taught 12 kids their names, 12 who could not do that before. That is not useless." "It is not enough," she whispered. "It is never enough. Not if you measure against perfect." He moved closer. "But measure against where they were before you came. That is everything." Her eyes burned. "How do you keep going?" "I remember my wife." The man's voice became hollow. "She said, 'Doing small good is still doing good. One person cannot heal the world, but they can heal one corner. Maybe that is enough.' Is it enough for you?" "Some days," he said. "Other days I see her die and know I failed. But I get up, I build, I help. I try to make failure mean something." The teacher understood then. They were the same, both trying to build something from their own broken pieces. "Yes," she said quietly, "but you have not failed yet. You have just hit your first wall. That is not failure." The true test came 2 weeks later. It came from my house. May learned faster than all the others. She could read their simple words. She could do their numbers. She took everything the teacher offered. I knew then I had to act. I brought my husband to the school. "May will not come tomorrow," he told the teacher. My heart was a stone. "Why not?" he explained. I said, "May learns too fast. She makes her brothers feel shame. This is not good for our family. But May loves learning." I said, "It is not May's place to be better than her brothers. She must stop." I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were full of water, but she did not cry. Her face was the face of a woman, not a child. She was learning that wanting is not enough. "Please," the teacher said, "let me talk to her." My husband translated. I shook my head. The teacher made a choice then, a dangerous one. "Tell her mother May is the best I have ever taught." She spoke slowly so my husband could follow. "Tell her May could be a teacher. She could earn more money than her brothers. She could care for us when we are old. Stopping her is wasting a gift." The words took a long time to reach me. My stubbornness became confusion. Then I spoke my deepest fear. "Who will marry a daughter who thinks she is better than men?" "A man who is smart enough to value her," the teacher answered. "And if no man wants her, she can support herself. She will not need a man." My eyes widened. An unmarried daughter was a curse. "Please," the teacher pushed, "give May 1 more month. If her brothers feel shame, I will teach them too. I will make sure everyone succeeds. Do not take this from her. Do not teach her that being smart is a weakness." The silence was long. My husband looked at me, his face torn. My own face was stone, but inside a wall was crumbling. Finally, I spoke. 1 month. 1 month, my husband said. "But you must keep your promise. The brothers must learn. They must feel good about learning, or May stops. I promise." The teacher's relief was a wave I could feel. "Thank you." After we left, May went to her desk. "Thank you," she whispered. "You earned this," the teacher told her, crouching down. "But now you must help me. Your brothers must love learning. Can you help?" May nodded. "I will help." That night I watched the teacher again. She was smiling. The man came. He said, "News travels fast. It always does." He sat beside her. You handled it well. You stood up for her, but also found a middle way. I was terrified, she said. I thought I would lose her, but you did not. You fought for her. He was quiet. That is what these children need. Someone who fights for them. Not everyone will be saved, but the ones who are will never forget. I turned away back into the shadows. She had won. For now. Order. A man who loses everything should understand the need for it. But Samuel Wade, he just built a new kind of chaos. Called it a school. A monument to his own failure with his girl, trying to fix it with someone else's. I heard the woman, this Walsh, thank him for the chance. He told her she was earning it. I just provided the space. What a lie. He was providing a challenge, a direct insult to the structures I had built. Two broken people propping each other up. That is not purpose. It is a slow-motion disaster. She was glad she stayed, I heard, and so was he, sitting there fooling themselves into thinking they were living, building something. They were building a fire, small for now. And my job, I knew then, was about putting it out, theirs and hers, and mine. Small good is not the same as real good. You cannot heal the world by breaking its rules. You need strength to enforce what is right. Winter came down hard that year. A proper reckoning sent from the mountains. I thought this will solve the problem. Nature's way of restoring order. 6 weeks their little game had been running, then the snow hit. I heard Wade's school was canceled. Good, I thought, for however long it takes. Let them dig out and remember what real survival looks like. I was told the woman looked disappointed, that progress with the children would stop. She did not understand. Winter is not a pause. It is a teacher. This is Montana, a place that does not reward foolishness. But the storm ended. 3 days and the sun was back out, sharp as a knife. I heard she went to the barn anyway, this Walsh woman. Found one of the children already there. A little girl named May, practicing her letters in the cold. My heart did not squeeze, it hardened. This was not dedication, this was indoctrination. The child walked through that snow, her folks did not seem to care. Papa say let me go, a breakdown of the family unit. I not waste time, Miss Walsh. The girl said it herself. Then more came. Maria. Diego. Trudging through the snow like it was a pilgrimage, she taught them in that freezing barn, her breath making clouds, her hands going numb. Her heart, I am sure, swelled with foolish pride. When Wade came to check on her, she told him what had happened. I can picture his face, that look of a man who thinks he is a saint. They came on their own. They did not want to stop learning. That is what he said later. No, Samuel. That is what happens when you offer something for nothing. They chose because you gave them an easy choice, a choice without standards or discipline. He told her she changed lives. She did not. She was endangering them. The moment was coming. I knew I had to act. Then my man Jack arrived. Said Coleman is here. Yes, I was, with the law on my side. I stood in his office, flanked by good men from town and Wade from the station, a man who understands rules. My voice was steady, full of the authority he had abandoned. We need to discuss your school. He said it was his property, his business. It becomes my business when you threaten the foundation of this town's future. I gestured to the truth of it. You are teaching children who belong in my school. You are creating a divide. He said his school did not accept them. He called it inclusion. I call it anarchy. The school board has standards, I told him. He said we had prejudices. That is when I knew he was lost. You can leave now. I came here to restore order, Samuel, not to leave. There are laws, I told him, about proper credentials, about licensing. I had done my homework. Miss Walsh has no formal teaching certificate, which makes this school an illegal operation. I saw her face crumble, her weakness exposed. Is that true? He asked her. She admitted it. No certificate. I smiled then, a smile of reason, of lawfulness. The territorial authorities will shut this down within a week. He took a step. But I was not finished. I offered him a solution. A way back to order. Miss Walsh works for me, my curriculum, my inspections. We would transfer any worthy students to a proper school, to my school. No. Her voice was sharp, the voice of a cornered animal. She would not compromise. Then you are operating illegally, and I will shut you down. He dared me. Try it. Samuel Wade, the rancher, playing lawmaker, threatening me with lawyers and newspapers, said he would ruin me for trying to deny children an education. He twisted my words. He twisted the truth. You are threatening me, I said. He promised it. A war of words and paper. We stared at each other, rage against reason. He would regret this, both of them. I left. The door slamming shut was the sound of a line being drawn. He thought he had won. He did not know me. I do not stop. This was not over. Providing contracted educational services, I read the filing myself, a loophole, a coward's way out. He thought a piece of paper would stop me. He thought wrong. This changes things, he told her. Yes, it did. It made the fight public. It made it necessary. I would not stop. I would find every crack, every mistake. They wanted to be perfect. No one is perfect, especially not a woman with a past she clearly ran from. I knew this would not end with paperwork. This was warfare now. That night, I did not sleep. I planned. I replayed his threats. I saw his arrogance, and I knew what I had to do. He warned her I would follow through, that her name would be dragged through the mud, her reputation scrutinized. He was right. People would dig. I would help them. I would make sure they saw the truth. This was not about principle. It was about character. Hers was questionable. They would call her unqualified, inappropriate. They would say she seduced a grieving man. Let them, she said. The defiance of a fool. She thought this was about something that mattered, and it was. It was about protecting a community from people like her. People who arrive with nothing and want to remake the world in their own broken image. That is not strength. His voice dropped. It is remarkable. I heard about their little moment later. How he looked at her. It was exactly as I suspected, a weakness I could use. He went to leave. An early morning tomorrow, he needed to file those papers to build his paper shield, but the truth was already out. Samuel returned from town with his small victory. You are officially a contracted private educator. He thought he had won, but Brennan from the station was already talking, just as I knew he would, spreading the word, the right word, about a woman who manipulated a good man. The fight had just begun. I planted the seed with the store owner's wife, a natural gossip. You know, it is a shame about Samuel, letting that woman use her position to try and marry him, to get her hands on his ranch. The words were perfect, simple, believable. It recast his generosity as her manipulation. His defense of her became proof of his weakness. It made them the villains. People do not need truth. They just need a story that feels true. Let them be careful. Let them be professional. Their caution would look like guilt. Every time they spoke, every glance they shared would become evidence. I would turn their virtue into a weapon against them. I would make this town a prison of whispers, and she would never have their trust. The next 3 weeks, I watched the poison work. I heard the gossip in the town square. I saw the way people looked at her. The school was thriving, yes, the children were learning. But that did not matter. I was winning the real war, the war for public opinion. Samuel was a respected man, but even he could not stand against a town united in suspicion. He was not just her employer. He was her weakness, and I would exploit it. They could not acknowledge their feelings. They could not risk it. I had them trapped. They were so busy watching their own behavior, they would not see the real threat coming. When Rosa went to that school, I was not worried. One woman's trust could not stop an avalanche of doubt. I had already won. They just did not know it yet. That afternoon, my face was a mask. The woman, Wash, had to be stopped. Was it the boy? My heart knew it was. What was the trouble? His father. He saw the boy getting above his station, thinking he was an American. That morning, the boy refused his chores. He claimed schoolwork was more important. His father grew angry, rightfully so. He put the boy in his place. He said no more school. A boy must learn a man's work. Where was the boy? In their cabin, sulking. The father warned that if he went to school again, the lesson would be harder. Wash moved before she even thought. She grabbed a coat, followed the girl into the cold. The boy was on his bed, face marked, lips split. He saw Wash and shame covered his face. "I am sorry, Miss Walsh. I should have done my work. I should not have. You did the right thing." She knelt by him, a fire burning inside her. "Learning is not rebellion. It is your right. Papa says I am forgetting my place, that I think I am better. Did you say that to him?" "No. I just wanted to finish my reading. Lesson. I was so close to understanding." The boy's voice cracked. "Is it wrong to want that?" "Never." Walsh looked at the sister. "Where is his father now?" "At work. He will not be back till dark." Walsh then made a choice that would burn it all down. "Diego is coming to the school. He will stay there tonight. Tomorrow we will find a solution. Miss Walsh, his father will be enraged. I do not care." She helped the boy stand. "No child is punished for wanting to learn. Not on my watch." She took him to the schoolhouse barn, settled him by the stove. She cleaned his cuts, then sent a boy for Samuel Wade. He came in moments, saw the boy, and his face turned to stone. "Who did this?" "His father. For refusing to abandon his lessons." Her voice was shaking. "Samuel, I brought him here. I know it is not my place to meddle in family matters, but I had to. You did what was right." Samuel knelt by the boy. "You are safe now. No one will harm you here again." "But my father. I will speak to your father. I will make him see that education is not disrespect. But you will not return there tonight." An hour passed. The boy's father appeared, angry and loud. "You have no right to my son. I have every right to protect a child on my land." Wade's voice was cold steel. "Disciplining your son is your affair. But you do not beat him for wanting an education. Not here. He is my son, so they are my rules. This is my school, so they are my rules." Wade stepped forward. "This is what will happen. Diego stays here tonight. Tomorrow he returns to you, but you will not touch him in anger. If you dislike his schooling, you speak with me. If you need him to work, we will make a schedule for both. But if you harm him again for trying to rise, you will deal with me. Do you understand?" The air was tight. Then the father spat on the dirt and left. Walsh let out a shaky breath. "I thank you. Do not thank me." Wade's voice was granite. "This is not finished. He is ashamed, furious, and he will make Diego pay for it. Then what is our move? I do not know yet." Wade raked a hand through his hair. "But I will not see that boy harmed again." That night, she watched the boy sleep. She saw his bruised face and felt a weight she had not planned for. She only wanted to teach these children. She did not know it would break families, put them in harm's way. She did not know it would force a choice between who they were and who they could be. Wade found her there at midnight. "You need rest," he said softly. "I cannot. When I close my eyes, I see his father's face. The fury, Samuel. What if I have only made it worse? What if my help is just another burden?" "Walsh." Wade sat near her. "You are not the cause. That man's anger at his own life caused this. But if I had not pushed them so hard, then Diego would still be ignorant and bruised just for other reasons." Wade's voice was certain. "You are not to blame for another man's cruelty. You are to blame for giving children a way out of it. But what if there is no way out? What if I only showed them a door they cannot open? Then they at least know a door is there." Wade turned to her completely. "My wife used to say that hope is better than nothing, even when it hurts, because hope is a chance, and a chance means life is not set in stone. You gave them a chance, Walsh. Do not let one angry man make you take it back." Her eyes stung. "I do not want them to pay for what I have taught them. They might. Some of them probably will. Change has a price." Wade's hand found hers where it lay between them. "But staying put costs even more. You know that better than most." She looked at their hands together. The moment was a dangerous thing. They were not alone. It had to be done. In the dark, a man's thoughts grow clear and hard. That woman, the teacher, we gave her a chance, but she was planting thorns in our children. I could see it in my Diego's eyes. A look that said, my life, his father's life, was not enough. He held that writing slate like a holy relic. This sickness had to be cut out at the root. It was my duty. A father protects his son from poison even if it looks like knowledge. And I knew the other men felt it too. I could feel their fear simmering right alongside my own. Tomorrow, we would act. We would take back what was ours. We would show her that family is stronger than books. She was changing him, making him soft. I saw him looking at his own hands, the hands of his father, as if they were foreign, as if holding a tool was a step down from holding a piece of chalk. This was not right. A man's work is his honor. She was stealing that from him, from all our sons and daughters. I would not let her break the chain that connected us to our past. I would not let her make my son ashamed of me. It was a simple, brutal truth. Her world and our world could not exist together. One had to be destroyed, and it would not be mine. This was my promise. This was the right thing to do. A hard thing, but the right thing. We found them at the barn, just as I knew we would. I stood between them and my boy. My voice was steady. It came from a place deep inside. We have come for our children. Her ideas are a disease. They teach our sons and daughters to look down on us. This school of hers must end. The teacher stepped out. Her face was pale, but her eyes had fire. She talked of reading, of numbers, of thinking. She did not understand. That is not thinking. It is betrayal. You teach my boy that our life is something to escape. That is not learning. It is a slow and steady poison. I teach him about his choices. That word was the core of the sickness. Choices. No, it is our choice. I saw the truth plain as day. We are their fathers, not her. The ranch boss, Mr. Wade, his face was like granite. He said we were making a mistake. He spoke of ignorance. It is easy for a rich man to talk down to us, your own children. I bit my tongue, but the words were already out. I saw a flicker of pain. I did not mean to cut so deep, but his next words were cold as a winter river. He spoke of losing his own, of watching chances die. And he said that was why he built this place, so our children would not have to. The air grew thick and heavy. The German man spoke for us. Our ways matter, too. Our traditions are important. A school that makes children look down on their parents is no school at all. I felt his words in my own heart. She said she never taught them shame. But she did. She taught them there was a better way than ours. The man's sadness was a mirror of my own. Maybe her way is better for some, but it is not our way. We have a right to our own life. One by one, we went to our children. I took Diego's hand. His face was wet with tears. He held his little slate. Miss Walsh, he said, I do not want to go. I know, son. My own voice felt like it would crack. But a father must decide. Is it right if it is wrong? His question was a sharp stone in my throat. I pulled him away. She did not understand. None of them did. All she could see was a boy's tears. She could not see the man he needed to become. She could not see the life I was saving him for. A life of honor, a life of hard work, a life where he knew his place and was proud of it. She thought she was giving him a gift, but it was a burden. A wedge she drove between father and son. This was not her fault. It was her nature. She was like a hawk that did not know it was killing the rabbit. It only knew it was hungry. She was hungry to feel important, to feel like she was saving us. We did not need saving. We only needed to be left alone. In our small cabin, the silence was heavy. I made him put the slate away. We will not need that anymore. I made him look at my hands. These hands built this home. These hands put food on our table. There is no shame in them, do you understand? He just nodded, his eyes cast down. I had broken something in him, I knew it. But I told myself it was for the best. You break a bone to set it right. You burn a field to make it grow back stronger. I had to burn her ideas out of his mind. I had to make him one of us again, completely. It was my job, it was my right, and it was my whole world, this family, this life. Nothing else mattered. I sat alone long after he fell asleep. Her face was still in my mind, the fire in her eyes, and Wade's face, the look of a man who had lost everything. Maybe he truly thought he was helping. Maybe he saw our children and remembered his own. I felt a small, dark twist of pity. But it passed. He was the boss. He lived in a big house. His pain was a luxury. My pain was about survival, about keeping my family whole. He did not understand the fear of a father who sees his son drifting away on a current he cannot fight. I had fought it today. I had won. But the quiet of the night did not feel like victory. It felt like stillness. What is love? It is protecting your own. It is making the hard choice. It is standing against the world to keep your family safe. That woman and the boss, they could have their feelings. They lived in a world of words and ideas. I lived in a world of dirt and sweat and calluses. In my world, you did not have time for such things. You had work, you had duty, you had the son sleeping in the next room. You had to make sure he grew up to be a man who understood that duty. Everything I did was for him, to keep him here, to keep him safe, to keep him mine. I looked out the window. The ranch was dark. It was peaceful. I had restored the proper order of things. There would be a cost, I knew that. I saw it in my son's eyes. A light had gone out. But I told myself a different light would grow in its place. The light of a man who knows his work, who loves his family, who respects his father. This was my truth. The time for new ways was not now. Not for us. We would hold to the old paths. They were harder, but they were sure. I had not lost my son. I had saved him. I repeated it in the dark until I believed it, until the doubt was a tiny buried seed. I had done the right thing. Tomorrow the work would be waiting, and we would face it together, as a family, as it should be. Cut them short. Shouts, the sound of horses. They pulled apart as the door flew open. A boy ran in, his face white. "Boss, you must come quickly. Coleman is back with the territorial marshal. He says he's closing the school. He says he has proof of—" He looked at Walsh, uneasy. "Of impropriety." I stood in the yard with a tall man wearing a marshal's badge and 6 armed deputies. My voice was victorious. "Marshal Graves, this is Samuel Wade, owner of this place and the man I told you about." The marshal's face was stern and unreadable. "Mr. Wade, I am here about a complaint from Superintendent Coleman. He says you run an unapproved school with an uncertified teacher. He has also provided statements from witnesses about improper conduct between you and Miss Walsh." The woman's face went slack. "That is a lie. Ma'am, I must speak with you alone." The marshal's voice was not cruel, but it was final. "But first I must inspect the schoolhouse and any papers." Wade's voice was a low threat. "Coleman, what in God's name did you say?" "The truth. That you invented a job for a woman you were sleeping with. That you have been using ranch money to keep your mistress while calling it charity." My smile was sharp. "I have sworn statements from 4 men. They say they saw you in her cabin late at night for hours at a time. That is absurd, is it?" I turned to the lawman. "Search the cabin, Marshal. It is suspiciously fine for a simple teacher. Personal things that suggest more than work. A woman living well while good families scrape by." I felt my trap snap shut, because I was right. Wade had furnished her cabin, brought her gifts, visited her late at night when no one could see. All of it looked innocent. And all of it would hang them. "Marshal," Wade started, "I do not know what Coleman paid those men to say. I paid no one." My voice was filled with false honor. "I simply asked questions and the truth came out. That you use education to hide your sin, and that Miss Walsh uses her body to trick you into marriage to secure her own future. That is not." Her voice failed her. "Marshal, I teach children. It is all I do. Mr. Wade hired me to fill a need. Everything else is. Then you will not mind my investigation." The marshal waved his men forward. Search the cabin and the school. I want any proof of wrongdoing noted. This was the moment, the one I had worked for. Her good name, her job, all of it torn down by the truth I had arranged. But then the Mexican woman stepped out from the watching crowd. Marshal, I am Rosa Delgado. My son Diego was in Miss Walsh's school, ma'am. This is not. You want the truth? I will give you truth. The woman's voice was loud. Miss Walsh saved my boy's life. When his own father beat him for learning, she kept him safe. She taught him to read, to add, to think he could be more than a laborer. That is not a seduction. It is a pure love, the kind that expects nothing. Mrs. Delgado, I understand. You understand nothing. Her words grew broken with feeling. You come with your guns and your law to judge this good woman. She teaches the children no one else wants. She protects them when no one else would. And you want to ruin her because she made a powerful man feel small? The German, the one who pulled his girl from school, came forward. Rosa is right, Miss Walsh. I did not like her ways. But she is not a bad woman. She is just. He searched for the words. She cares too much. That is her only crime. She cares more than is comfortable. Then another spoke, and another, some who had left her, some who had stayed, all of them saying the same thing, that whatever Kate Walsh was, she was no harlot or a cheat. The marshal listened, his face a mask. At last, he looked at me. Superintendent, these stories do not support your claims. They are covering for her, or you are lying. The marshal's voice turned hard. Did you or did you not pay these men for their statements? I did not. My face burned hot. I may have offered something for their time. You bribed them. Wade's voice was pure poison. You made up lies to ruin her name because she would not bow to you. That is not. Marshal. The Chinese father came forward, his wife at his side. I want to show you this. He pointed to his daughter, who held a paper. My daughter wrote this for you. He gave it to the marshal. The lawman read it out loud. Dear Marshal Graves, my name is Mei Chang. I am 6 years old. Miss Walsh teaches me to read and write. She is a good teacher. She is a good. It was a simple matter of law. An uncertified woman running an unlicensed school. I stood on righteous ground. Then the girl's letter appeared. A cheap, sentimental ploy. The words were too perfect, the grammar too clean. Clearly the teacher wrote it. The marshal, a fool, was captivated. 6 years old, he whispered. The father, another actor in this charade, confirmed the age. He spoke of progress. He spoke of hope. His voice cracked with manufactured emotion. He accused me of destroying futures, of breaking his child's heart. I felt nothing but contempt for the performance. The marshal fell silent. He looked at me, his eyes full of doubt, my doubt. He called me superintendent. He was declining the investigation. He said the evidence was weak. He spoke of fabricated charges. He warned me how this looked, an attack on a school for their kind. This was not about the law anymore. It had become about politics. My authority was dissolving right in front of me. The marshal tipped his hat and rode away. He abandoned his duty. He abandoned me. I stood there, trapped in a circle of ignorant, hostile faces. Rage tasted like ash in my mouth. I looked at Wade. This is not over. I would find another way to enforce the law. His reply was quiet. It was a blade pressed to my throat. He threatened me, not with courts. He promised a personal crusade. A deep dive into my life, my career, my decisions. He would dig and dig until my world came crashing down. I called it what it was, a threat against a public servant. He called me a corrupt man. He said my protection was gone. His shadow fell over me. Leave, he said, and never return. I left. I took the burning shame with me. Behind me, the crowd celebrated their lawlessness. They praised the woman who had caused all this. They thanked her for defying order, for defying me. I knew what would happen next. It was painfully obvious. As soon as the last of them drifted away, he would take her in his arms. It was never about a school. It was always about this. A wealthy rancher and his new plaything. I could picture it clearly, her feigned concern. Samuel, people will see. And his arrogant reply, let them see. He would declare his love, announce his intentions to the world. He would frame it as a noble stand against prejudice, not the sordid affair it truly was. He would call her the woman he loved, the one he wanted to build a life with, and anyone who disagreed would answer to him. A threat. Another one. It was all they had, brute force and intimidation, not reason, not law. I imagined her fake hesitation, her token protest about his reputation, his business, as if a man like Samuel Wade cared for such things. He would speak of loss, of not being afraid to claim what was his. He would frame her face with his hands, a gesture of false tenderness. He would ask her to stay, not as a teacher, as his partner, his equal. Such empty words. She was a homeless woman he had taken in. She was a pawn he used to defy me. And now she was being rewarded for her compliance. He would say she made his ranch a home. I knew what she truly made it, a mockery of decency, a monument to his own arrogance. He was waiting for her to accept the bargain he offered, a life she had done nothing to earn. The tears in her eyes would be part of the act, her voice trembling with supposed emotion. She would say she spent her life waiting to be chosen. How pathetic. He did not choose her. He used her. He saw an opportunity. He saw a weapon to use against my authority. And now, their little play was complete. They would kiss, a display for the whole territory to gossip about, a seal on their indecent pact. They would laugh. They would talk about telling the housekeeper, or surprising her, as if their dalliance was a charming secret. As if I did not see it for the ugly transaction it was. She would look at the land, the buildings, all the things he owned, and she would say she wanted it. She wanted him. Of course she did. She would not see a savior. She would see a rich man. She would see an escape from the life she deserved. This was not about purpose or belonging. It was about security, a place given, not earned. She was a failure who stumbled into a fortune. She was an opportunist who clung to a powerful man. The promised job, the one she was truly qualified for, would have been her proper place. Small, forgettable. Instead, she had this: a life built on defiance, a school built on a lie, a future built on my humiliation. And she would believe she deserved it. She would believe it was hers. That is the greatest lie of all. But this is not the end. A man of my standing does not simply vanish. A man of the law does not simply quit. They think they have won. They have only shown me the real enemy, and I will not rest until order is restored. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.